I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Matari and Duncan. Commissioner Brooks is excused. We do have a Zoom link on our agenda today, but we are not able to make that happen. So for anybody watching on YouTube, there are no public comments on our meeting today because we have no public hearing. So are there changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Conflicts of interest?
No conflict.
All right, hearing none. We'll go ahead with our first item in deliberations, and that's a variance, VAR23-0009, party of Nipp. And Mr. Finkel, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Lev Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation to show you the details of the request. Please advise if you would like me to proceed or just briefly give a synopsis of what it is.
I just have one question for you on this. Is this variance consistent with other properties in that close vicinity because of the terrain?
Commissioner Matari, it's hard to answer that question because I have not researched the adjoining parcels of land. The location of the site, there's like a curvature to the road as well as the layout of the lots that are along the Twin Lakes shoreline. Mm-hmm. I am not familiar with any recent approvals for a front yard variance in that area, but I have in the past worked on variances on Twin Lakes in close proximity to Rice Road and Cochrane Lane, but I do not know whether the adjoining parcels of land were granted a variance recently, however.
Well, I understand it. It's really just what we find in these situations is typically, other parcels have similar situations or dealt with similarly. So I just wanted to just kind of confirm not necessarily adjoining, but in that area, obviously we've done this, it's consistent, and so forth.
That's a good assessment, but I would say that the physical conditions of the property warrant approval of a variance due to a hardship that is not self-imposed. The site is extremely steep. It's a cliff.
I understand. I'm okay if we don't do the presentation.
Yeah, I don't need the presentation. So continue with your brief synopsis.
So I'll be very brief. The applicants are requesting to construct a primary residence on the property. They currently have a cabin that's at the bottom of the hill right next to the shoreline. That structure will be converted into an accessory living unit once the primary residence is approved and constructed on site. Based on the site visit that was conducted by staff, we find, as I just stated, we find that there's basis to approve, or there's an undue hardship that exists on site to warrant the approval of a 15-foot variance in order to have the structure within 10 feet of the front property line. The applicant has submitted a comprehensive geotechnical analysis to demonstrate that the site is suitable for development so long as the contractor complies with all of the recommendations of the geotechnical engineer for the grading, stormwater retention, foundation, and so forth. We have presented this to the hearing examiner on, I believe, August 1st of this year, and subsequently it was recommended for approval. All of the agencies were in support of this application and recommended conditions or recommended conditions of approval that are implemented in the HE recommendation. I stand for any questions that you have for me.
Okay, any other questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
So this, I'm a little bit familiar with Twin Lakes, and this is not one of those neighborhoods like Silver Beach, like I think what you're talking about, where it would be suitable for an overlay zoning, like we talked about in the past. It's like 9 out of 10 or almost every single property would require a variance. This is not the case. This is a one specific case that says, yeah, there might be other variances nearby, but Twin Lakes has the different shoreline around it. And so, yeah, so to me, this still qualifies, even though it's not in one of those neighborhoods that every single property has requested a variance.
And I understand, and I agree with the hardship component of this. I think, just from a perspective of ensuring some continuity when it's demanded, we don't want to be in a situation where some property owners think, well, you did it for these folks, and I have this special property I want to build, so I want it for me. They need to understand that, the specifics of this particular property warrant it.
Yes.
And so really that's the point of this discussion. I'm for it, and I
Perfect.
don't have any problem with it. I move that we approve VAR 23-0009 Nipp with the conditions as set forth.
Second.
Commissioner Matari?
Aye.
Chair Duncan?
Aye. All right. Case approved. And item 2, CUP 24-0002 Party of Reed. Mr. Finkel again, please.
I apologize. Give me a split second. Commissioners, the second request, I'll be very brief. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to establish a privately owned recreational facility on a 5-acre parcel of land in the rural zone. The privately owned recreational facility will be used for a dog agility training facility conducted on site within a gated field, as well as within a 2,400 square foot barn that was recently constructed for storage purposes, but the applicant has been advised through the review process that in order for them to utilize it for a classroom, they would need to go through a change of use permit. They have been in close contact with our building official to understand and make the necessary improvements should this application be approved. As you can see in the HE report, there is a table with the types of events that will be conducted on site. There will be classes that will be held on site. They will be either group classes or individual private lessons. The applicant will also have at least 4 trials per year that will draw a maximum of approximately 45 people at any of those events. The site is located near state line, south of Holland Road. There's an existing residence on the property that will not be utilized for any of the activities. It will be off limits for the public. It will be solely for the primary use of the applicant. The applicant is proposing a parking area that will accommodate any of the parking needs during trials, and staff is recommending conditions to have landscaping around the area to preserve the aesthetics of the rural community. During the agency comment period, we solicited comments from all the agencies with jurisdiction. Based on our assessment, all of the conditions or all of the recommendations can be implemented as conditions of approval as stated in the report. The hearing examiner heard this request on August 1st of this year and subsequently recommended approval. I don't know if there's anything else specifically that stands out that needs to be further addressed, but I stand for any questions that you have.
Question?
Yes. Is there a procedure in place to follow up to ensure that vaccinations are being captured for the dogs that show up, as well as the contract for the portable toilets and so forth?
The simple answer is no. We don't have any follow-up steps to make sure that the applicant is in compliance. However, in the event that there is a potential complaint and it rises to the level of a formal code violation, we would investigate the issue, and then our code enforcement would make a determination whether they're in violation of any of the provisions of the order of decision, and then the department would take the project through a compliance review hearing for the board to either bring the applicant into compliance or to revoke the permit. And I'm glad you brought up that question, because we struggled with the recommendations of the sheriff's office, because technically they're not requesting a commercial kennel. They're not breeding or boarding any animals. So it's a hard decision for us to make, but we do have a condition of approval that we implemented, and that would be condition 805 of the HE report that says the applicant shall require proof of anti-rabies vaccination for all dogs allowed on site. And I believe that the applicant has told me that they would have volunteered to do that anyways, just to protect themselves.
Is it stated in their services? Are we asking that they advertise that in their services so that way others are aware that that's a prerequisite?
I don't have an answer for you on that one, Commissioner Matari.
Okay, that's
But
fine.
I do know that, as I understand, she has conducted some events on her property in the past. We told her to stop until the CUP is approved, and she advises that even those events that were done historically on the property, all of the dogs that were brought on site had anti-rabies vaccinations. I think she appears to be a very responsible individual who wants to do the right thing.
Yeah. Does she have a website? Do you remember? I'm asking you all these tough questions today. I don't mean to.
That's okay. I do not recall.
Okay. Okay. Those are my questions.
Okay. I think Pat's looking at something. Did you want to chime in?
Oh, just, excuse me. We could require, her to present that proof to community development upon request, if that would satisfy that concern. Also, I just want to mention that I did, in reviewing this prior to this meeting, I did notice that there was a potential issue with the sheriff's office and whether a kennel license would be required. I looked at the narrative and the HE recommendation and our animal control ordinance, and I concluded that a kennel license would not be required for this because they're kept, handled, possessed by their owners at all times when they're on the premises, and not actually possessed or harbored or kept by the applicant.
Yeah.
So, and of course, should they start doing any of those activities, then a kennel license would be required, as well as an amendment to the CUP to allow for a commercial kennel, but that's not required at this time.
Okay. So I think that we would be able to, if Commissioner Matari would like, modify 8.05. The applicant shall require proof of anti-rabies vaccination for all dogs allowed on site and make information available to community development upon request.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of including that in any public communications advertising the services.
That could be added to the conditions.
So that way it's clear,
Either or
that this is a
either
condition.
or both.
Yeah,
Whatever the
well, both
board's
is fine.
preferences.
Both is fine. And I don't think that that's adding a burden here. I mean, just adding that language in a
Right.
website or
One
whatever
sentence to your website
is sufficient.
hires.
I would, unless Commissioner Duncan has any questions, I'd just like to read something into the record that was in our packet and just talk about it a little bit.
Okay?
This was a comment which I suppose is from a neighbor, and what she wrote was, I'm concerned about the noise from the dogs barking and the amount of people. The traffic in our community has increased a tremendous amount, and this will only add to it. We live here for a rural, quiet atmosphere, and I feel like businesses opening up on the properties will deplete this. It is nothing personal, but I just want to keep a rural atmosphere, not businesses. And I think that that's one of the challenges here because, you know, we want to have the ability for people to do a lot of different things on their property. But there's also the idea that people move into certain parts of the county because they want to be quiet. They want to get away from things. And so I think you should be entitled to do the things you want to do in your property until it affects the neighbors. And light, excessive light could be one of those things. Excessive noise could be one of those things. So I don't have a problem approving this, but I do think that we should make sure that the safeguards are in place, that if the neighbors do complain about barking, because if they're going to have up to 45 dogs on the property at any given time, I think it's virtually impossible for dogs not to start barking at each other. One dog just doesn't like the other. They're seeking dominance within the pack, what have you. And that should be, we should keep an eye on that because there is a tranquility that we don't want to destroy.
And she would still have to comply with the provisions of the animal control ordinance regarding
Yes.
dog barking. And if that becomes a problem, you know, we could have the sheriff and code enforcement coming out.
And I have no doubt that this applicant has all the intention of the world of doing the right thing. I think if anything, it's just a statement of be selective with your clients, that if they have dogs, not unlike what we dealt with recently, that want to run out, that want to bark, that want to do these things, that maybe it's not the right dog for that particular venue. So, but I'm fine with it.
I would just add that there is a business within a half a mile of the property, and there's commercial trucks driving daily on Holland Road, page 15. It's Exhibit A-3A, pictures going by the property. So
And
I
I
don't
saw
think
that.
this, so I don't think this use is going to add anything negative to the neighborhood. But if you want to talk about 805, how you want that to read, we probably should spend a little bit more time on that.
Yeah.
So maybe just add an additional sentence that says,
The applicant shall advertise.
shall within their advertising.
Shall within their advertising require proof of anti-rabies vaccination for all dogs allowed on site. And then what was the other thing you mentioned, Pat, that it should be available upon request?
Oh, just proof of anti-rabies vaccinations.
Yeah.
I can build it into that condition as you have requested. I don't believe that's an issue. I just don't know whether.
Well, it should be made available to community development
Yes.
upon request, I think is the addition.
Yeah,
That,
just
that
made
way
available.
they should be capturing this as documentation with their clients.
Yeah.
I just don't know if she has a website where she advertises. I
Well,
just don't
she's
recall.
got something
You know, whatever,
promotional
whether it's a
material.
website or a flyer. Or,
Understood.
Yeah, so that's why I said applicant shall within their advertising. Make notice of the rabies requirement, of the vaccination requirement.
And, capture documentation of that for their clients.
So I think we can approve that in essence, and staff can make it sound nice. And then we can look at it when we go to sign the order of decision.
That's fine.
Okay?
I move that we approve CUP 24-0002 Reed with the additions that as described in this meeting by the board.
Second.
Commissioner Matari,
Aye.
Chair Duncan,
Aye. All right. That's approved. And item 3, it's a variance, VAR 23-0005 Nash.
Commissioners, for the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. This is a request by Robert Nash to approve 3 separate variances on an existing third of an acre parcel of land located in the restricted residential zone. The subject property is located on the northeast side of Hayden Lake. It is a waterfront property. There is an existing cabin. It's quite old. It was not constructed by the current owner. He recently purchased it. But the current location of it and existing improvements on site, slope conditions, as well as the narrowness of the site, based on the applicant's request, warrant an approval of 3 variances. One would be a 25-foot front yard variance to front yard variance with a 0-foot setback, a 6-foot setback variance to the 10-foot yard setback on the east side of the property, and a 10-inch setback to the 10-foot side yard setback on the west side of the property. The applicant wants to remodel the existing cabin as well as expand it. What they're doing is they're expanding it on the backside of the existing cabin towards the lake. They would keep the same plane of the expansion on the backside with the side yard property line, so there would not be an additional expansion to the side yard property line. There would not be an additional expansion to the front yard setback because they're already on the property line. And the expansion on the west side of the property would be encroaching 10 inches into the 10-foot side yard setback with a 9-foot 2 setback remaining. We have visited the property. We solicited the comments from agencies with jurisdiction. None of the agencies had raised any concerns. We do believe that the narrowness of the site and the steep slopes and the location of the cabin, as well as the existing septic tank, warrant the approval of a variance based on the applicant's request to expand the existing cabin on the property. One of the things that I did want to point out, we have as a condition of approval, there is an existing shed as well as a portion of the front patio deck or front patio stairs that encroach into the adjoining right-of-way. And as a condition of approval, we have that in check the conditions really quick.
7.06, existing encroachments into the water's edge court right-of-way, including shed and deck landings, shall be removed from the right-of-way.
Correct. And we wanted to make sure, when we posted the property, we found out that the staircase and the deck have been removed, but the shed is still there. So we will need to confirm before we issue a certificate of occupancy for the modified structure that shed is moved onto the property and off of the right-of-way. The hearing examiner heard this request on 2 different occasions. It was, I believe, let's see. On June 20th of this year, as well as July 15th, and subsequently the hearing examiner recommended approval of their request.
Okay.
I stand for any questions that you have for me at this time.
I just have one question. On page 34 of our packet, which I can just show you real quick, is this image right here. The lots next door, they're not, is it developed or not? It's kind of hard to tell.
There is a residence located on the west side of the property. However, the property to the east is currently vacant.
Okay, and so with this variance, would that affect their that vacant property's ability to develop, being close to another another structure?
That's a very good question. Commissioner Matari, the existing cabin is already within 6 feet of the side yard property line. And the proposed expansion on the back of the cabin would be in the same plane, so would not further encroach. I don't know the specific building code requirements, but the adjoining neighbor would have to maintain a 10-foot separation or a 10-foot setback from their property line, which would give a minimum of 16-foot separation between the two structures unless they request a variance as well. And then our building code would have to chime in and provide comments on whether or not there's special needs for fire separation requirements in any protrusions that are on those sidewalls that need to be addressed accordingly.
I'm just asking in the sense because the addition pushes that, that line back. Like you have the cabin that's, would you say 10 feet away from the edge of the property line right now? It's existing?
No,
6?
it's 6 feet.
Okay, 6. So they're now going to extend that line further back. And my question is really geared towards, could it affect the vacant property owner in their ability of where a site location would be if they wanted to build a house?
I don't have an answer for you on that one. What would happen is that the building official would review the application and provide requirements, but in condition 7.3 of our code, there are under subsection 703 subsection 3, it says there are requirements for fire rated wall separation.
I understand. Really,
But I just don't know the details.
Yeah, Ben, did you?
Yeah, I think, sorry.
Go ahead, Ben.
I was just saying to add to that, I think, the property owner to the east is gonna be responsible to comply with the setbacks as, required by code. And so unless there's some hardship that they would require a variance to that side yard setback, it'd be expected that they're gonna be 10 feet from that side property line.
Yeah.
So the improvement that they're proposing here shouldn't impact the development on that neighboring property.
No, I understand. It's really just again, the question is geared towards, is what we're looking at approving today going to prospectively affect the adjacent property owner? What if they want a 6-foot setback? Well, you gave it to my neighbor, why can't I have it? That's in essence what I'm asking. Are we setting them up to be precluded from the same decision that we're about to make here?
I see. Yeah, and I think maybe Vlad could add on to this part of it, but I think the reason that they're requesting the 6-foot setback is because of the existing structure, and that's where it is already.
I understand.
So it's a non-conforming type of a situation, and that's why they're just keeping the same line, which the similar argument wouldn't be able to be used.
I don't have a problem with what they're asking. I'm really asking, how does it affect the adjacent property owner and their desire to develop that land if we allow this 6-foot setback to be extended further than what the existing structure is?
It does not affect them.
I was gonna say, each property is unique, each variance request is unique, they may not have the same issues with topography, or they might. So we just have to look at them on an individual basis. I mean, I don't think it affects the neighboring property to any greater degree than the existing structures on the property, so.
It's fine. It's fine. I want to ask because this is the easiest time and we don't have to have an adjacent neighbor going, well, you did it for them and why are you turning me down? And
And it also doesn't set precedent.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. See, there's the stake here, and then here's the existing structure, so the other will just continue on. But this is the property, so.
What my question is geared towards, okay, I get that part. Now,
Yep.
what if this person wants to build here, but because they may not be approved, right, because of the proximity? I'm just asking, is there a
Yeah.
fire code or something? And now that this is going back, that's going to force this person to have to either, push back more or something.
Right, well, there's no way to know, because we don't know if the guy wants a 100 square foot dry cabin, or if they want a,
I agree.
30,000 square foot mansion, but.
And Commissioner Matari, just to clarify, in the past decisions on variances, I have asked a similar question of our building official, and what they advise me is they look at the request that's being proposed today, and if the structure is too close to the property line, the fire separation requirements kick in right away, regardless of what happens on the adjoining parcel of land, whether it's developed or undeveloped, and it works vice versa. So if the adjoining neighbor comes in to develop their property with or without a variance on that vacant parcel of land, the building official will say, okay, I don't care what happens, what's currently developed on the adjoining parcel of land. As soon as the proposed structure comes in with certain distance of the property line, we will impose these fire protection standards within the building building permit approval. And I had that communication in the past. So they do not look at the development on adjoining parcel. They look at the proximity of the property line between the two parcels.
And I suspect that would be the case. I'm really just asking to be thorough.
Understood.
You know, because there are clearly developments where you have 0 lot lines and the homes are practically touching. They're not, but from a distance, it would, you know, look that way. So it's really just that question, just so that we
Understood.
don't end up creating a situation for the adjacent property owner because we're saying yes today. So those are my questions.
All right.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm ready for a motion.
I move that we approve VAR 23-0005 Nash with the conditions as defined.
Second.
Commissioner Matari?
Aye.
Chair Duncan?
Aye. All right, that concludes our agenda for today. 10:35, meeting adjourned. Thank you. All right, welcome back. We have one item under business, Family Division Exemption Interpretation Question. Director Callahan.
Thank you kindly. My apologies for running late. The hospital was running late. The issue here was unforeseen as we processed family divisions, but one of our consultants brought to our attention a what if. If land is divided through the family exemption and one larger parcel is left over that's large enough to go through another subdivision, such as a minor subdivision, then the question becomes, is that allowed? The language of the amendment doesn't expressly address that, but in the very last paragraph, it does, to me, imply that it shouldn't be allowed because it says parcels created pursuant to this subsection that are not retained by the grantee for a period of 5 years from the date of recording of division shall not be eligible for building or development permits until 5 years. Setting all that aside, this really comes down to an interpretation and whether you want to be able to allow these kinds of things. We could go back and amend the language to make it clear that it's okay. My real concern is that if you do a family division and then are able to have another minor subdivision, kind of sets up that serial subdivision process we've been trying to avoid. So far I've been telling people that my interpretation is it's not allowed. I just wanted to visit with you and see what you think.
I mean, I kind of want to allow them to apply for the regular process because then we're going to be able to follow all those things and then it'll be addressed at that time. And buyer beware. I mean, you already have this many. See, it happened to us and our thing. We've got 17 acres at the end of the road. Well, we can't subdivide unless the road is, brought up to highway district standards. Yeah. So to me, that's kind of a buyer beware. I think the subdivision process should still be allowed in that case. And then that's when we're going to address, okay, because this now is a major subdivision as far as it's going to be over 5 lots from the parent parcel, then we need to make these adjustments. So I don't know. I mean, to me, I think it would be permissible. Because what if you do have a 40-acre parcel left?
That's the issue.
Yeah. So that would be my my thing. And then again, you have to use the subdivision process at that point. You can't do the family.
You've exhausted your family.
Yes, you've exhausted, I think, all the free exemptions at that point. Yeah, and so then you would have to go through a true subdivision process where then we can require the water, we can require the road, we can require all these things. So that's just my thought.
I would just maybe add to, if they, for the example that David brought up, if it's like a 25-acre parcel to begin with, and they do in a family division to do a 5-acre and a 20, and then they wanted to proceed with the subsequent minor subdivision, I think we would be a minor subdivision on that 20. We wouldn't count the 5 that it was originally split from. So the standards associated with a major subdivision, we wouldn't be incorporating into that subdivision review. It would only have to meet the standards of a minor subdivision. Just make sure that that was clear.
Sure. No, I realize that, but you will still be able to look at every subdivision uniquely and say, these are the issues that we need to come and address.
Some could be minors, some could be majors.
Depends on the circumstance.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
It's funny, you know, I have a little bit of a policy difference with you on that. You know, the buyer beware is, you know, I tend to be a little less embracing of that because oftentimes you get into the catch me if you can. And I've had to catch some people because I could. And that buyer beware is, it leaves people with little choices after the fact, especially if they discover afterwards. I prefer, especially with real estate, some disclosure requirements in that sense, that there are some assurances that this is, I am warranting, representing to you that this is what the property is and this is what you can do with it. As opposed to requiring people to have to figure out where within the county records there is a restriction on a property. I think that that's one of the things that this area lacks compared to other areas. So, and as far as the exemption goes, you know, I do have concerns about the serial component of it because a lot of times people are entitled to a one-time exemption. They're not entitled to multiple. And the serial development, I think, is something that we should be concerned about. And I look at how can things be abused, because this is the what if. A well-crafted document, a well-crafted contract, if you will, addresses these what ifs. And we're probably going to have one or two more what ifs coming from you on this. You know, the intent that I heard from the people in these discussions, the public hearings, was I can't do this for my kid. I didn't hear I want to be able to do this for my kid and then my grandkid and my great-grandkids who aren't even here yet.
Or hand a piece off to a developer.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because that is another thing that could be done, I guess, right?
That's the question to me.
Is subdivide.
Idea. If you got 20 acres left over, you could sell that to Joe Schmo who comes in for a minor subdivision. Then it's no longer a family division, and we've created 5 lots out of what was really should have been a major subdivision.
Well, let's walk this through real quick. If I had this 20 acres, right, are we suggesting that I could subdivide it again, give it to my kids, and then have them sell it to the developer?
Right, that's the issue. One of the issues to me.
Yes, and the developer would know that they couldn't develop for 5 years.
Well, that's an interpretational call on my part. It doesn't actually say that.
Yes.
The code doesn't address or contemplate the idea of a family division and then giving it off, or excuse me, selling it off to a developer.
Yeah, you see, I think that circumvents the whole point of this. I mean, we never talked about development for, you know, commercial purposes and investment purposes. We talked about doing this for family members because housing was too expensive here. And the subdevelopment process was really a chicken or egg situation. I can't get the loan until I've gone through the subdevelopment process in order to have the parcel, which is where the loan will be secured.
That's a good point.
I mean, that's what I heard in this.
I've been interpreting it so far to mean that you can't do it yet. But that's why I also wanted to have this conversation with you.
And I don't know that the example that is being presented to us now is that scenario. I think it's still the family that's wanting to do the 5-acre split to one, but then.
It could easily be.
But it could apply. I mean, you could certainly extend that.
You can extrapolate this out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to have a decision today. If you want to think about it, we'll come back and have a discussion.
Or bring Commissioner Brooks in either way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like the idea of trying to get this right before we, have to have you start making decisions on something after the fact.
Right.
And
'Cause at the moment, in the case that Ben's brought up, the consultant could appeal my decision. It could go to the hearing examiner, it could come to you. That's one avenue of relief right now today. But at the moment, I've been telling them you can't do this, because I think it subverts the concept of the family division.
yes,
So you want to think about it? What would you like to do?
Yeah, we can think about it.
And I'll just bring it back at the next regular meeting? or
well,
something?
bring it back and, add something additional that you discover, so we can,
Make it more
We
complex.
already have one change coming October 10th.
Yes,
So if we can get all the changes rounded up before then, that would be helpful.
that would be handy, but we're running into deadlines for.
Yeah, we could still incorporate something into the ordinance at this point.
Yeah. So we've got the 26th.
there's another way to look at this, right? I mean, I suppose that the board can change this at any point in time, right? So, what we could do is just say, look, interpret it how you're interpreting it, clarify that language, and if we have these situations come before the board,
Reconsider.
then we can reconsider it.
So you can, yeah, I mean, you can actually put that in the language that, the board would have to approve any further subdivisions. I mean, we already do, obviously, but approve the application for one. If your parent parcel is part of a family split, in order to further subdivide,
Board approval or something like that.
then it'd be a case-by-case basis. So the only thing that you risk is arbitrary and capricious if the board says yes to this one and no to that one.
Oh, well, yeah, you see, I was thinking that if we had enough of them, then we would just amend the.
Yeah, you can do that too,
I-
absolutely.
I worry because, we're in a political position, and so you can be conflicted with, doing what is politically right and what is,
Better planning.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So, there's ways.
Okay. So we'll just leave it as is for now, but I'll come back to you with additional information.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you bet.
Thanks.
And, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Just telling staff that there's nothing, in the interim while we're doing this, there's nothing stopping staff or me from, drafting potential ordinance amendments as well to address the issue. And then, once we get more, if we do get more, clearer direction, then we can move forward with those.
What's our deadline here for getting all of this stuff buttoned up?
When is the hearing on the?
10th, October 10th?
Yeah.
Is that,
Commissioner Target asked for the 8th. Oh, no, that's not, that's the different one.
That's something else. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we're,
It's the emergency ordinance, I think.
yeah, I think it's the 10th.
Emergency or interim?
Yeah,
Yes,
interim. Sorry.
That only needs a 14-day notice?
Um,
How that works?
That would still need 28 days
Does-
per our
Oh, okay.
land use code.
Okay.
So we wouldn't
Oh.
have time to do that.
No, we
Because it
would
would be a
not.
land use code amendment.
I think it's a 10th. Yeah, right, that 28 days is gonna hurt us because you only have 10 days from October and then you would need another 18 days. So 30 minus 18 is, today.
So then you need action on it.
Well, no, I mean, we can leave it just as it is. Yeah, and then just do it,
When that time allows.
Oh, I see. It just,
It'd be helpful. Move it along quickly if we could.
yeah.
But, if we can't, then we can't. We just address that separately.
Well, what
If-
happens
If needed, if we even need it.
but what happens if someone disagrees with you on your assessment right
They
now?
can appeal it. They have to pay a filing fee, but they
Yeah.
appeal it, goes to hearing examiner, then you.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I doubt we'll have anything like that in the near future, but we definitely should follow up with this. And
It'd be good clarity.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, I think you will definitely find at least one, maybe two more of these types of what-ifs.
Clarifications.
Yeah.
We try to bring them all to you at once, but, we get these questions from people that are also kind of scheming and planning, and then we get other questions, and we're like, oh, we didn't consider that, so, we'll try our best.
It's hard to imagine every possible outcome.
You can't, because humans are unique, and so it's just not possible.
We've had already had some lively discussions about some of those issues in our Friday morning meetings.
Well, it's charitable.
Well, you can address a lot of it by just having inclusive or exclusive language too. So, and remember, planning is a better word than scheming.
Yes, yes,
I'll correct that. I'll correct my,
On the 10th.
my thinking there.
yeah. So I suppose if you wanted to use inclusive or exclusive language, you could put something in there that talks about the parent parcel would be subject to including that split already. So if you use the 25-acre example, then that 20-acre would actually have to include that 5-acre parcel if you're going to further subdivide. They would have to include that in their numbers.
That would help clarify whether it's a major or minor.
Yeah. And then that would get rid of your cereals because,
Yeah, it would.
yeah.
Yeah, but would that be in perpetuity? 20, 30, 40 years later, now I bought this lot and I'm stuck with this other person?
Well, it's not that you're stuck with the other person. What you would be stuck with is, let's just use something, well, let's use the 25 acres, right? So no, that's not going to work.
410s maybe, if they have a 40 and they want to do 410s and the family division. I don't know
And
if that
they want
helps.
to come, and then they would have to use the subdivision process to go through and make all those 10s 5s, then that would be a major subdivision. So you would have to, but I
Each
mean,
one individually, I mean, if just from the current code would be a minor subdivision, but if you're applying the regulation to previous divisions,
4 + 4 would be a major.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like your idea, but I'd see it being a problem way into the future because now these properties, when it comes time that the individuals sell, the children sell,
Yeah.
they've actually encumbered each other.
or the
from future-
parents pass away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that 410s example that I gave, is like if one person, and they're no longer the same owners, wants to do a 2-lot subdivision, then you're taking all of those and saying, well, you've got a 2-lot major now.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have that 5-year standard, and so if we do want to keep that standard and say, well, we believe that that's adequate enough to fulfill the intent of a family division, and therefore not apply the regulations to those family divisions, maybe that's it. Maybe that's a good
The issue still becomes in 5 years, you're going to have a major subdivision once that 40 goes from 4 to 8
I like
serial.
the one-time, family subdivision with that lot. And, if there's a situation where, and it'll probably be many years from now, where people start coming back to the board, a future board will decide whether or not they want to do that.
So are you thinking, sorry to interrupt you, but are you thinking that subdivision potential is eliminated if you've gone through the family division exemption?
Well, what I'm thinking is that the family subdivision for a particular lot is appropriate one time, for that parent, right? But let's say, fast forward, the parent dies, okay? Well, the children can still subdivide their lots to their kids, because that exemption still exists. They sell a large parcel out of a 100-acre parcel that's already been subdivided. Whoever buys that can subdivide it for their kids. But it's just not the same parent using this as a serial way to continue subdividing a large parcel of land. That's the way I kind of thought of it when we were listening to people. That was the problem we were trying to solve for them, not this, speculatory, I do this at timing intervals of when, real estate is maybe up or, things like that.
No, but I'm just concerned in the 25 acre thing that, okay, so the parents retain 20, give the kids 5, the parents pass away, and now what's going to happen with this 20? So now you're saying in perpetuity, it can never be divided.
No, no, no. What I'm saying is that those parents who own that 20, before they died, they can't use the family exemption again.
Correct, correct. And
But
that's
once
already
they
in there.
die, the family exemption is available to whoever owns it next.
Right, but is that the only way to divide in the future then, is the family division?
No, they would be able to use family or the normal subdividing.
Okay, so we're kind of saying back to the same thing, is you, yeah.
The thing I'd like to think through with staff and bring back to you is the policy question of how far do we let family exemptions in combination with other divisions go until it starts to become a major subdivision? Or even an abuse of the family exemption. But I don't really have an answer for that right now. I'm mostly just
Right.
wanting to bring issue
Well,
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this has been a problem for a couple decades now, is the serial minors.
Yeah.
And it's not really fair to somebody who has this little piece and they just want to subdivide it, that their whole neighborhood wants to do the exact same thing. Now you've got a major. I think for me, doing it piecemeal like that is just something society has to deal with. It's when the developers come in and purposely do that. So there's an intent there. They're avoiding the major subdivision to put more money in their pockets. I think, to me, that's where it causes more havoc, because these people have chosen to live this way of life. It's not this developer coming in and now these people buy, and to your point, they didn't know really what was going on, because we get the calls all the time, where's my snowplow? Well, you better get with your neighbors, because there is nobody to snowplow your road. That's on you and your neighbors. So I don't know that anyone's come up with a good answer. There's always going to be downsides.
Yeah, well,
that.
and this is the challenge here, because it's death by 1,000 cuts or it's death by one big cut. And, in the end, whether there is a 1,000 people moving in from a major subdivision or 1,000 people who move in over all these tiny little family and minor subdivision things, the impact in that area is still the same.
Right.
And, how that gets paid for, because this is actually something I've had a discussion back and forth in email with a highway district manager or a board member, is there has to be some incremental way for every new person, this is how much, of an impact they're going to make on the road. This is what should be contributed towards that, which is why and this is a slightly different subject matter, but with the impact fee, 8 years, it's crazy. Because it could take 80 years for that to eventually occur.
Well, and I think the thing too is you don't have a crystal ball, but you can say, if this is a major subdivision bringing in 1,000 people, that is going to happen within a year or two. Where this other way, it's going to happen probably over a decade or two, and minor adjustments are made along the way, right? Because the school district, for example, will look at their entire district, whereas we might only be looking at this one neighborhood, and how that's going to impact them, and so it's just not.
It's a lot more moving pieces that way.
A lot more, and there's no one size fits all, and I think that's where I get the most heartburn is, how many people are we going to hurt with this type of regulation? So, yeah. Okay?
To
All
be
right.
continued.
Yes. Okay. All right, 10:59, meeting adjourned.